I'm Caleb Anderson, and this is the Spirit Farm Podcast, where we cultivate growth in all forms, body, mind, heart, and soul, for real people in real time. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about mental health and the movie The Joker. Lots of people talking about The Joker. The movie is it helpful in raising awareness for mental illness in our culture today, or is it harmful? We're going to address that. I'm going to bring in my friend John Jolliffe to help me have this conversation, because John Jolliffe is a genius. John Jolliffe has been in the realm of therapy and psychotherapy, counseling people for decades. He works out of his home in Newport Beach, California. He has been a therapist for the stars, for celebrities, on radio for 15 years as a talk show host and taking questions for people. He's got so much time logged helping people process their own mental health. And as he's going to clarify for us, the term mental illness is not even really very helpful, but he's going to shift us over to the term mental disorders. And I hope that you find this helpful. I hope that you find this really practical and accessible. He's going to give us tools, and we're going to discuss tools for engaging with our friends and family members who may be battling mental health disorders, and even some tips for ourselves to control our thought life so that we don't spiral, so that we don't slip down that slippery slope, because we're all being bombarded by thoughts. Some helpful, and we can gravitate toward those, we can choose those, and some not so helpful. We're going to get into that at the end. I know that it's going to be good and inspiring and practical, and I hope that you will lean in, take a moment to listen to this whole thing, and as you think about friends, as you think about other people that might get something out of this, share it with them, forward it along, make sure that they know this encouraging, engaging conversation via the technologies with my friend, John Jolliffe. John, thank you for joining me on the Spirit Farm Podcast this morning.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me back.
Yes, coming to us from your office in Newport Beach. And what we want to talk about today is the idea of mental health. We're gonna touch on the movie The Joker. But first, I thought we would just start with a general overview, your thoughts, because this is the world that you work in. You see people, treat people every single day. What are you noticing about mental health in our culture right now?
Well, there's a lot to say about, mental health. Certainly the movie has brought this topic to the fore again. The question of whether mental health and mental illness is associated with violence, and it's the idea of mental illness. It's really a medical model. The term it's poorly phrased. It's not really mental illness. It's not like you're ill with a virus or something like that.
Right.
It's more of a mental disorder.
Okay.
Something that's out of order. There's mood disorders, there's anxiety disorders, there's eating disorders, personality disorders, There's dementia, there's attention deficit disorders. There's many ways in which we can be out of order. That's the old mental illness. So we're no longer really following the medical model as we are the psychiatric or psychological model.
Yeah, I like that. That makes sense. And it seems to align more with what we're seeing and even the film itself. So something is out of order, out of place. What are you seeing in terms of things that are stacking up against people, maybe that are causing disorder in the mental health area?
Yeah, that's the big question is, cause or effect. Is it the chicken or the egg?
Yeah.
Do people have trouble behaviorally? Do they have trouble in community because of being mentally ill or mentally disordered? Or is it the community itself? This conversation is popularized by the discussion of violence, by the discussion of guns. Do guns kill people, or do people kill people? I wrote an article recently entitled "The Cause of Human Violence," in which I said it's neither the guns that kill people nor people who kill people. It's the society in which people are raised is killing people who kill people.
Say more about that.
Yeah. So you have to look no further than how our civilization process contributes to human beings behaving uncivilized to one another, from the production of ego contests, heightened college preparation and admission standards, social media's emphasis on fitting in and measuring up in the sea of conformity, which promotes wounds of alienation that leaves no scars for an uncounted legion of invisible, lonely people hidden in plain sight. You see, being civilized too often means remaining in control of one's feelings despite the pain. Remember in the movie The Joker, he said, "My mother kept telling me to put a smile on my face."
Yeah.
I contend this control may be the source of the percolating inner turmoil that becomes the rage that we report on the newsroom every day. One more day of chasing the story and missing the message. But I think what we have to do is we have to go back, take a step back, and talk about the difference between feelings and emotions, because people are not feeling disturbed, they're emotionally disturbed.
Okay.
People use the words feelings and emotions interchangeably, but they're very different. Anger is a feeling. Rage is an emotion. And we damage our feelings when we suppress them, when we control them. And so what we have is we have problems with people, this repression, this shame, this self-judgment, the suppression of emotions, of feelings, leaves people emotionally disturbed. Damaged feelings are the epicenter of all violence.
I've heard you say
Damaged
before.
feelings, emotions are the epicenter.
I've heard you say before that that's where the idea of depression comes from, is depressing our feelings, and it's as we depress that they become damaged, when they're not dealt with, when they're not expressed, when they're not validated, when we're not connecting with the reality. So is that what you're seeing? And to tie it back to our society and our culture, our society is we're conditioned in this place to depress, and we're not expressing in healthy ways. And so our feelings are becoming damaged emotions, and that's where the rage comes from.
I called, you mentioned depression. I think there's two types of depression. There's the endogenous type of depression, the chemical-based depression. That's the noun depression. And then you have the verb depressing, which is what we do to feelings. We suppress them or depress them. The endogenous type of depression, the chemical-based depression, medication can oftentimes be helpful. But when you have the verb depressing, medication is often not helpful. In fact, contributes to the depressing or the suppressing. What we need to do with the verb depressing, which is an ongoing act, is to express. The talking therapies are the things that help. The question is, what feelings are we depressing? Is it fear? Is it anger? Is it loss? Is it hurt? I say the suppression of feelings and emotions for extended periods of time lead eventually to reportable and regrettable events. When people suffer the suppression of feelings for these extended periods of time, they learn that the only relief available is through severing their awareness, which is consciousness, just not being as aware that I'm being neglected or abused. And it leads feelings and emotions that are never constructively processed or resolved. And these repressions stack the behavioral deck on a person until an event triggers that long internalized emotion, and the rage emerges unrestrained, severed by consciousness. And so you see this young boy the Joker in this movie.
Yeah.
He had suppressed feelings.
Yeah.
And he was I think at one point in the movie they talked about him being chained to a radiator and beaten severely, and
Yeah.
having brain damage, and all of this. And he had suppressed all this. It wasn't until later in the movie that he became awakened to the fact of how his crazy mother had treated him,
Right.
and that she wasn't even his mother to begin with. He was given to her.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So this condition that he had, it's called Pseudobulbar Affect, where there's this characteristic episodes of uncontrollable laughter or crying,
Right.
more often crying than laughing, was part of that affect.
Yeah.
That was part of the conflict that he was having that got him in so much trouble. But did you see in the movie, too, how many people are so full of repression themselves that they would strike out at somebody who was disabled the way he was?
Yeah. I thought that the movie...
punch him. They would beat him. They would kick him.
That it did a good
this
job.
Is the repression in them, in and of themselves.
Yeah. That's for me. I thought that the movie did a good job of exposing, as the place where you started, the society that we're born into and the impact that other people are having, kind of cultivating the worst side of mental illness or mental disorder. And for me, I thought, what's his name? Todd Phillips was the director. He took one of the most famous characters in the history of comics, and he used it to bring this to the surface, to expose for us what's going on all around us. And this was an extreme case, and it's it's glorified in a way because it's a famous comic and a movie, but this is reality that people are facing and dealing with. And so as I was watching it and as I thought about it, I thought of people. I go back into my life and in high school and in college and even as an adult where people pop into my mind that I think, oh, that person was struggling with a mental disorder and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to approach it. I didn't know how to interact. Can you give us like a couple of telltale signs that maybe someone in our life is struggling with a mental disorder?
Well, it is common. 1 in 5 Americans struggle with mental disorders, mental illness. 1 in 5. It's approximately 48 million people in America every year. 1 in 25 adults have serious mental disorders each year. And youth between 6 and 17, between 6 years old and 17, 1 in 6 experience mental illness or mental disorder. Things like you would never consider hyperactivity, ADHD, very common diagnosis. It's a mental disorder. It affects the cognitive and behavior. There are disorders that affect emotions, the affect. Then you have the neurological dementia. You never think of that as a mental disorder, but it truly is. You have eating disorders. Let me ask you a question before we get into some more of these. What do you think is the most deadly or dangerous mental disorder or mental illness? Would it be schizophrenia? Would it be bipolar? Would it be anorexia? What would you say is the most deadly disorder?
That's a tough question because I think that my instinct is to say that the most deadly disorder would be something where the person is most likely to harm themselves. The people that I've known that have harmed themselves have had they've been at least bipolar and maybe had some other complicating issues tied into that. So I guess that would be my answer. The bipolar seemed to play a role, and that led them down a path where over time it just was getting worse, maybe with different disorders being integrated in. And a couple of people or a few people that I know have inflicted self-harm with that kind of a diagnosis.
Well, schizophrenia is certainly one of the scary disorders or mental illnesses, schizophrenia, because we don't understand these hallucinations and delusions. And bipolar is probably the more popular. Everybody gets diagnosed as somehow bipolar if you have a manic attack or you get a lot of high energy and things like that. And from the drinks that we drink create a certain kind of high energy state. So bipolar is probably one of the more popular. But the most dangerous mental disorder or mental illness by far, 4 times more than bipolar, is anorexia. Anorexia, which is an eating disorder,
right.
Anorexia nervosa. You have bulimia and you have anorexia is the most popular. But anorexia, 6% of these people will die.
Really?
Yeah, because you have electrolyte problems and emaciation and various kinds of things. So there's a lot of misunderstanding about the dangers and causes. And I think that we would not probably put ADD or ADHD as a mental disorder or eating disorders. We would think of the more maybe psychotic disorders as being causes or thought of as mental disorders. We don't think of anxiety oftentimes as a mental disorder, even depression.
Yeah.
But the sad statistic is that from the onset, when someone diagnoses someone or someone assesses someone, maybe they go into a professional and they are assessed and diagnosed as having one of the many mental disorders. From the diagnosis to the onset of treatment, it's 11 years. 11 years goes by.
What do you mean?
It means if you go into to see your, let's say, family physician, and you're diagnosed as having a mental disorder.
Yeah.
From that diagnosis and that assessment until the onset of where you actually go in and get help or someone gives you medication or help or treatment and all that, 11 years passes.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the statistics on mental illness, is that people don't get the help. They deny it, they self-medicate, they'll use any number of street drugs, maybe alcohol, distraction, to self-medicate until it becomes so grievous they may be arrested, maybe lose a few jobs, lose a few marriages, then they can't avoid treatment any further. It's about 11 years.
That's wild. Because you're right. It's not as accepted as the severe problem that it is. It's something that it's just anxiety. I just have an anxiety problem, and then the drinking escalates, or like you said, other street drugs or things like that. We try to deal with it in our own way or ways that we've seen other people deal with it, and not getting to the real treatment.
You have a high incidence of suicide.
Yeah.
2017 was the last, the best year that we have for statistics. And in 2017, 47,000 people killed themselves. 1,400,000 people every year seriously think about killing themselves.
So what if...
So that's another way of dealing with mental illness. You see how many times in the movie The Joker, he puts a gun to his head.
Yeah.
And even the lady in the elevator with her child, she put a gun to her head too, as evidence of it's stressful being a mother.
Right.
It's stressful living in the apartment complex in the life that we're living. Wouldn't it be better just
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So
when it got to be so difficult for his life, there was kind of an identification that maybe she would be better off dead than alive as well. And we see what happened at the end of the movie about that.
Yeah. So how do we help? Let's just keep it on other people for the moment. How do we help friends, family members who might be struggling with something like this to take a step toward treatment instead of the other medication offers, instead of letting the 11 years go by without being judgmental or seeming like we're better or they're screwed up? How have you seen people effectively help their friends and family members to seek healthy treatment options?
Well, you remember there is this statement by the Joker when he's seeing his social worker, and he says, "You never quite listen. You never listen to me." And what did he say when, at the end of the movie, he's talking to the comedian, and he says, "What do you get when you cross a mentally ill loner with a society that abandons him and treats him like trash?" Remember, that was the kind of the knock knock. What do you get?
Yep.
He says, "You get what you fucking deserve." And then now we have Columbine. And now we have mass shootings. We have one mass shooting a month.
One mass shooting a month.
So nobody's listening to each other. We don't know how to listen to each other. People with mental disorders are actually saying to us without saying it is, "Can you hear what I have the hardest time telling you? Can you hear what I have the hardest time telling you?" And so I think we have to be better listeners.
Yeah.
Seek to understand rather than trying to be understood.
So are you suggesting that whatever they're saying is not really what they're saying, that they're saying something behind what they're saying, and to really practice the skill of listening to what's behind the statement or behind the question? Is that what you're getting at?
Well, if you watch the movie, how many times did he actually tell us what the problem was? You're not listening. You know, I'm a clown. I'm trying to make people happy. The question is, why are you so consumed with smiling? Why are you so consumed with making us laugh? What is the class clown actually doing? They're crying. They're crying out for attention. They're crying out for something that's very personal to them.
Yeah.
And yet we look so superficially at what they say or how they behave. We judge them on their behavior. We judge them on the surface.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So remember I told you that the number one psychological need in mankind is not love. We talk about love all the time. It's a junk word. If love means everything, it means nothing.
Right. It's a catch-all.
I love being on your show. I love the water I'm drinking. I have a special glass of water. I love the plants on my desk. I love my kids. If it means everything, it means nothing. It's a junk word.
Yeah.
The number one psychological need in mankind is belonging, membership, being a part of something bigger than myself. And when you're alienated from belonging, maybe it's because you have a personality disorder. Maybe there's something cognitive. Maybe you process differently than everybody else. In poetry, we call madness wisdom. In art, we call it creation. Madness in search of God is the highest form of worship. You know, where we deviate from other people. I wrote an article, let's see if I have it here on my desk, Imaginative Intelligence. Again, this idea that we need to think of people differently than somehow alienating them, you know, discriminating against them. So I wrote an article called Imaginative Intelligence, in which I say that creatives deviate from conventional thinking. And if we're ever to provide an environment which promotes creativity, we have to abandon our love affair with conformity. A deviant is defined as departing from usual and accepted standards, and synonymous with atypical, irregular, non-conforming, an individualist who may be eccentric, unorthodox, exceptionally idiosyncratic, threatening to some yet welcomed by a growing constituency of imaginative thinkers. Creative people are considered to be deviants, considered different. I've been accused of being a disruptor. It's because we have this love affair with conformity. There's an educational invention called the fear of being wrong. Being wrong is an educational invention. The only way you really learn is to experiment.
Yeah.
And getting it, maybe getting it wrong, if that's what the word is the way we learn.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at Frank Gehry, the iconic architect who did the Disney concert hall in LA and other places around the world, his postmodern deconstruction is deviant. It's a deviant from conventional architecture. The idea that people are somehow alienated, constantly throughout the movie to the Joker, he was talking about alienation and the pain of alienation, of not being understood, of being ridiculed, being kicked, spit on, and just not accepted. Do you know that of homeless people, and we're seeing more and more in the news about homeless people, do you know only 20% of homeless people, this is statistics from the mental health, let's do it. What is my, but only 20% of homeless people, according to the National Alliance of Mental Health, only 20% of homeless people are mentally disordered or mentally ill.
Really? Referring to the Joker as you do, the fascinating thing is he is looking for belonging. That's clear, and he doesn't even belong with clowns, right? That was kind of one of the last nails in the coffin. One of the last things that tip him over the edge is his rejection by his quote friends that were in this this silly or this low industry of being clowns, and he couldn't even stay in friendship with them. He was being ridiculed and made fun of and rejected by them. And it was like, that was one of the things that just like the scale just tipped. And he left with that gun that the guy gave him, and you just saw like that was the path. There he goes. He's on that slippery slope. And then as I think about your comments about listening, that's convicting because at the same time, people desperately need to be listened to. The rest of us, me included, are so busy that our pace is almost depriving, or I'm allowing it to deprive me of time to listen, to really engage, to really stop and listen to what the person is saying behind what they're saying. And I don't think that very many of us, you're a rare exception because you sit with people for an hour at a time and do really listen, but not very many of us are taking that time and really valuing people and leaning in and listening for that. Would you agree with that assessment? And then how would you say that we should address that?
I think the thing that I guess if there's any advantage that I have that I'd like to encourage you to develop is a curiosity. Rather than being appalled, rather than seeing people who are different as being odd or something to be avoided.
Yeah.
I think that people who are different are not dangerous. That's the unfortunate thing that led to the conclusion in the Joker, is that whenever you see people who are deviant, people who are dressing as a clown in public or acting irregular, that we should somehow run the opposite direction. I think there's an interesting, one of the, I think, assets, if it is an asset in my way of working, is that I'm very curious. I move in to
I've
rather
noticed that.
than away from. And what I've learned from, suppose, irregulars, the madmen, the disordered, I've learned many things that I find highly important. Gahil Gibran is one of my favorite authors, and he writes a book called The Madman. And he says the madman has been freed from the masks of life that were binding his soul. And remember, in the movie, there was a mask that was put into the trash. The Joker, when he took the mask off, he put it in the trash.
Yes.
And there was a smile on his face when
Yes.
he got out from behind the character, the makeup, the mask. He says, basically, I have found both freedom and safety in my madness. The freedom of loneliness and the safety from being understood. It was interesting because in the idea of madness, there is a certain kind of freedom. It's a place where you can hide and you can live, and there's very few people who will ridicule you and scorn you, because in your madness, there's not really a lot of room. It's like an obsession. An obsession doesn't have room for other people. I remember somebody came into my office one day and was suffering paranoia, and he says, is this room bugged? And rather than argue the merits of that, I got on the floor and started looking around underneath the chairs and underneath the furniture for perhaps a bug, a microphone or something. And I entered into the delusion where there's only really room for one. And he looked at me and he says to me, it's okay. He gave me the permission. So in the madness, there's both freedom and safety in the madness.
Yeah.
Freedom of loneliness and the safety from being understood.
Yeah.
For those who understand us, enslave us. They enslave something in us when they understand us. So this one particular person writing in the book, The Madman, he said that I feel a certain kind of freedom from being understood. You can't manipulate me if you understand me. Well, I mean, if you misunderstand me, you can't manipulate me. But if you understand me, then you might use me in your own purpose.
John, that's fantastic stuff, and I know that we need to wrap up. Any quick final thought for someone who they're listening to this and they're realizing that maybe they need some help personally, that maybe things are sliding for them, and they want to move toward health and out of disorder?
Well, I think there's a lot of help today where there hasn't been in the past. Churches, pastoral counseling can take you to a certain level. Sometimes the best thing you can ever do for somebody is to refer them. It's always good to know key people in the community who can be of service. You know, I don't know that any one guide, call them a therapist, a psychologist, psychiatrist, social worker, pastoral counselor, coach. I don't know that any one guide can take a person all the way. But I think you grow in stages and you awaken in stages.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with having challenges in life. I think the challenge is, are you willing to take responsibility for whatever the challenge on your journey is? You know, you can't have a want to for somebody else.
Right.
And there's nothing like having a want to yourself to really grow through some of these things.
Yeah.
Most of the mental challenges, mental disorders can be helped. I would say majority of them can be helped. but not without training. You need tools. You need ways of looking at life. I will give you just one example. For those of you who worry about what people think, who think that maybe the world is against you, the camera rule of thumb basically says, if you can record it on a tape recorder, or you can take a picture of it, then it's true. If it is not, it is unsubstantiated. It's unverifiable. There's too much in our minds today that's unverifiable.
Yeah.
False beliefs.
Yeah.
I'm not concerned about right or wrong, good or bad, positive or negative. I'm concerned only with true and false.
Yeah.
Is it true or is it false? Too many of us entertain and think about things you cannot verify. That person didn't invite me to the party because they don't like me.
Right.
Can you tape record that they said they didn't like you? Can you take a picture of them not liking you? No. It goes into the realm of unverifiable. Eliminate all the unverifiable. There is such a thing called ego-dystonic thinking. Ego-dystonic is repugnant thinking. We have thousands of them. Everybody does. You're not mentally ill or mentally disordered if you have ego-dystonic thinking. Ego-dystonic thoughts bring you down. They are repugnant. They are thoughts like, I should eat a pound of fudge. I should quit my job and run off to Tahiti. I should kill myself. I should have an affair. There's thousands of them every day that we have as humans. We also have ego-systonic, repugnant, ego-systonic, inspirational. God hasn't brought me this far to let me down. I have much to be grateful for. This is a first world problem. Get over it. There are many things that are ego-systonic. So we need to focus on the ego-systonic, the inspirational ideas that we have every day, and we need to ignore the ego-dystonic, which can be so destabilizing.
Yeah.
Just recognize, if you have a want to, you want to learn, there's tricks and tools that you can obtain.
Yeah.
Find somebody who can train you, teach you, and coach you in these things.
Yeah.
And you're going to have a very easy time with life.
John, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that you have to jump off, but let's do this again before too long.
Yes, very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Spirit Farm podcast, bringing in my friend, the Yoda, the genius, John Jolliffe. So grateful for all his insights. You can see just the wealth of experience that man has. I hope that there's some stuff that you were able to jot down, take away, remember, cling to, and don't forget. If you have friends, family members, coworkers who would get something out of this, maybe they're in this kind of a field, maybe they have family members that are struggling with mental disorders, forward this along. Make sure that they get this. Share this wherever it is on social media that you share stuff. Let's spread the word. Let's be of encouragement. Let's help people have these handles. And personally for me, I was convicted, and I'm going to be paying more attention in the coming days to how I can better listen, how I can listen to understand and not to be understood, how I can pay attention to what someone is really saying or really asking and take the time to do so. And then that final takeaway, I hope that you run with this, is to manage those ego thoughts that are coming in. Are they the ones that are taking us down, or are they the ones that are boosting us up? And let's choose the ones that are boosting us up over and over and over again, and be vigilant and diligent about that. And even engage a therapist like John or friends that we can have those kind of dialogues with, that we can be those who express instead of depressing our feelings. I can't wait to have John back on. I think we'll do this more regularly so that we can just glean more of the mental health wisdom from him. Forward this along. Let us know in social what you thought, what you got out of it, and I will see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening and watching.